smart.
If there is any secret to being holy, I think we cannot skip or bypass the virtue of humility. And this is what Jesus talks about in the gospel today. I bless you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise. Who are the learned and the wise? The proud. And then revealing them to mere children, the humble. And Jesus talks about it in many oracles. In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 18, we hear the apostles quarreling with each other on who was the greatest. And Jesus came to them and he said to them, the greatest must be the least. You must become like little children. Unless you become like little children, you would never enter the kingdom of God. Yesterday, I was talking about the journey of the Israelites to the promised land. And at the end, I said that when the people entered the promised land, one of the mistakes they made was to begin to feel that they were self-sufficient. They began to tell Samuel, we want to have a king. And Samuel said to them, he wants them. He said, no, God has been with you. You are a special people. You must always look up to God. Don't want to be like any other nation because you're special. And they said, no, we want a king. We can handle things ourselves now. And that was the beginning of the fall of the Israelites, because they thought they could handle things by themselves. They thought they just needed a king like any other nations, and then God can have some rest, okay? And we'll handle things ourselves. We find a lot of that again in the first reading of today. We know at this point, Israel is divided into two kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And the northern kingdom began to worship other gods. They got involved in idolatry. And different things begin to go wrong. And the prophets go warning them, but they would not listen. So God sends the Assyrians to go and judge them, to destroy the northern kingdom. And after they have destroyed the northern kingdom, listen to what they say. They say, by my strength, by my own arm, I have done this. By my own intelligence, for understanding is mine. Everything they take credit for themselves. It's about them, it's about what they have been able to do. And then the prophet asked them, how can an axe begin to say that I did it by myself without acknowledging the person who handles the axe? How can the saw begin to take pride in itself rather than saying there was somebody who helped me actually and moved me up and down? And this is what happens when pride comes in, that we look down on people and it prevents us from looking up to God. That is really the problem, because pride kicks God out of our lives, because somehow the world has taught us that in order to succeed, in order to be happy, we have to be self-sufficient, okay? In fact, nobody wants to be called a child. No, people will warn you and tell you, please don't allow to be treated like a child. Nobody wants to be like a child. Everybody has to work hard. That's what the world has taught us. We have to work hard in order to be self-sufficient. Make a lot of money that you don't have to depend on anything. You have to be independent. And because of that, we have learned to be independent. That means including God himself. We want to be independent. We don't want to really depend on God. And at times people go to church because they feel they need something. Once they get that thing, then they don't need God again. So God just filling the gaps when we really need him. I always talk about God of the gaps. So God, I call God in when I really need him, and when I don't need him, then I can go around my business. That is what pride does. And somehow, all of us, if we have to be holy, we have to be fighting against pride. St. Peter, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5 and 6, James chapter 4, verse 6 and 10, tell us about this same thing. God hates the proud, and he will exalt the lowly. One of the most wonderful conversations I ever had that I really enjoyed having. And it went on up till midnight because I never got tired. It was when there was one guy who came to visit me when I was still in the missions in Kenya. He was working with the Justice and Peace of the diocese, so he had come to visit. And we were in this outstation, which is really remote, and I was just there by myself. So he came, and it was a good company. So after supper, we sat to just talk, to have discussion. There was something very, very peculiar about this man because he had been a madman before. He had moved in the street picking papers. He was really mad, and he was taken to a rehabilitation center, and he got better. And then when he was completely cured, he became extremely intelligent. He's the only human being I could see, I found, that could write with his left hand and his right hand, could use both hands in writing. And in fact, one thing I saw peculiar about him is that he could write, he could make a mirror writing. So when he's writing his notes, he starts from the left to the right. And when he writes that, you cannot read it unless you put it on the mirror. And what made him to do that is because when he was in high school, he did a summary of all his work, and just before exams, his summary was stolen by other students. So because of that, he developed a way of writing such that even if you steal his book, you cannot read. You can only read if you put it on the mirror. And he told me madness, he told me a lot of things about madness, but there is a question that he asked me that evening when I told him I want to go to bed now because I have to wake up in the morning and I want to put my alarm on. And then he said to me, "What wakes you up in the morning? What wakes you up in the morning?" And as innocent as I was, I told him, when my alarm goes off, then I wake up. He said, "Really? Your alarm wakes you up in the morning?" I said, "Yes." I was very confident. And he said, "Tony, when you die, I'm going to bring an alarm and I see if it's going to wake you up. Okay, when you die, I'm going to put an alarm and check if it's going to wake you up." And then it dawned on me. It was something very simple but very deep. There are times we feel these things are happening. We wake up because the alarm wakes us up, so we are the ones waking ourselves up. And that's why when we wake up, we just go around programs as if we had created everything. But he said to me, by those words, it is not actually the alarm, it is God who wakes you up. It is God who wakes you up, not the alarm. Otherwise, the alarm is going to wake up all the people who have died, right? You just bring the alarm and he wakes them up. Bring the alarm and he wakes them up. And he said to me, when you die, I'm going to bring the alarm and check if it's going to wake you up. My dear friends, this is what humility is, that we empty ourselves, we consider ourselves as nothing, so that God can make something out of us. Jesus in yesterday's gospel is a continuation of yesterday's gospel, cursing the people of Bethsaida and Chorazin, the people of Capernaum, and said, "Capernaum, you want to exalt yourself above the nations, you will be brought down." It tells them that we must become childlike. And who are children? Children are those who depend on their parents, complete dependence of on their parents. They don't think about what they are going to do tomorrow. They don't think about what they are going to do tonight. They totally submit to God. And this is what Jesus says. We must empty ourselves. We must consider ourselves as nothing so that God can make something out of us. We must completely depend on God for everything. It is not by our power, it is not by our might. And an antidote to pride is being grateful. That in spite of everything that we do, we don't just see and say, "Okay, I've achieved this, I've done this, and I've done this." No. I raise my hands to God and I say, "Lord, these things I've achieved is not by my power. I want to say thank you. Everything has come from you. Even what I do, I cannot do them without you." That is an antidote to being being proud, being grateful. That we are grateful for everything that we receive. We are grateful for the little achievements that we make. Even the things, the successes that we have in our lives, we are grateful to them and saying it is not by ourselves. It is by God. And that is why when we empty ourselves, when we become empty, then there is space for God to come in. But if we are full already, then it's a problem. Our hands must be ready to receive. Our hands must be empty. It must be disposed like this. Not like this and under our armpits. It becomes very difficult to come in. Okay? This is what pride is. It closes your fist and puts your hands under your armpit saying, I don't need you, God. And that is not it. Okay? We have to open our hands in humility, saying, God, I need you every hour. Let us therefore, through the intercession of Saint Bonaventure, who was really a saint who explored all of this, who was humble in his way of life, we continue to ask his intercession that we may become people of humility.
Kiss us, mother, kiss your children. Bring God's blessings from above. With your mantle blue enfold us in your gentle holy love. See the darkness dissipating, hear the trumpet echoing, Satan's rage